As the historic month of September 1938 begins in London, conspirator Theo Court, first secretary at the London Embassy, decides to make a direct approach to the British cabinet. He arranges a secret nighttime meeting with the British Foreign Secretary Lord Halifax at Downing Street. To escape detection by Gestapo spies attached to his London embassy, Court slips through the back garden entrance and into number 10. Court tells Halifax that a firm stand by Britain will bring down Hitler's regime.
He said, if you don't take a strong stand, a clear and firm stand, a brutally clear stand, not a diplomatically clear stand, but a brutally clear stand, Hitler will not understand, Hitler will not back down, and Hitler will go to war. And you will eventually be forced to go to war too. But you can avoid it by calling Hitler's bluff and telling him to stop in no uncertain terms. And Halifax listened to this and gave Court the impression that he was certainly going to report it to Prime Minister Chamberlain, and that he expected it to have an impact.
At the same time, conspirator Ernst von Weizsäcker is urgently sending similar messages through diplomatic channels. He believes what the plotters are asking can't possibly be refused.
They weren't asking to help them militarily. They weren't asking them to take any part in the internal affairs of Germany. They were quite capable of overthrowing the regime, given the right circumstances. All they wanted was the Allies to stand up and be counted.
Chamberlain, however, dismisses the plotters' warnings that Hitler is poised to attack. Any message he will send to Hitler will be delivered by his trusted ambassador, Neville Henderson, at Nuremberg. The Nazi Party's yearly rally is just beginning, and Neville Henderson is a guest. He spends a sociable afternoon with Hermann Göring. They talk about the impending crisis. But Henderson doesn't make much of an impact, for when Göring speaks at Nuremberg 2 days later, he tells the enormous crowd that the Czechs are a miserable pygmy race, oppressing a cultured people in the name of Moscow and the Jew devil. That same day, Henderson refuses to deliver a polite note of warning from the British cabinet. He thinks it will upset Hitler. In London, a worried Winston Churchill has already been told that the conspirators are ready to act. He implores the cabinet to cooperate. Tell Germany that if she sets foot in Czechoslovakia, we should at once be at war with her, he urges Halifax. Churchill isn't aware that Chamberlain has already decided on Plan Z. He will go to Germany and settle the crisis in person.
Chamberlain, of course, had this idea that he alone could bring Hitler to heel. The whole thing could be solved man to man. He had no conception of the psychology of Hitler at all. He more or less judged him as a European statesman like himself that he could deal with, even if they differed on this and that. They could talk.
On September 15th, Chamberlain leaves London on the first of 3 trips to meet Hitler. At the airport, conspirator Theo Court does his diplomatic duty as first secretary at the German embassy and sees him off. But beneath his correct demeanor, Court is shattered. He knows that Chamberlain's mission means the end of the conspirators' plans.
It was a bombshell to them because they couldn't launch a putsch to overthrow the government when the head of the government was talking peace with the British Prime Minister. So they were completely demolished.
In Germany, Chamberlain's obsession with peace is quickly exploited by Hitler. The betrayal of an ally begins. Privately, Chamberlain agrees to give the Sudetenland to Hitler in return for Hitler's promise that he will leave the rest of Czechoslovakia alone. The British public, unaware that a deal is at hand, is frightened by the prospect of war. Preparations are made to protect London from bombing, and civilians of all ages are issued gas masks. Home after his second trip to Germany, Chamberlain prepares the British people for the sellout of Czechoslovakia.
How horrible, fantastic, incredible it is that we should be digging trenches and trying on gas masks here because of a quarrel in a faraway country between people of whom we know nothing.
Finally, on September 29th at Munich, with Mussolini and French Prime Minister Daladier there too, Chamberlain agrees to almost everything Hitler has asked for. Instead of threatening Hitler as the conspirators had asked, he puts pressure on the Czechs instead. The sovereign Czech territory of Sudetenland is handed over to Germany in another bloodless victory for its Führer. For the conspirators, the news couldn't be worse.
They had lost the last chance in this period of peace.
Karl Goerdeler, who has worked so tirelessly to prevent war, watches all his efforts come to nothing.
My father, from the Conference of Munich, was totally sure that a war would come.
Hitler's triumph in the Sudetenland has altered the political climate inside Germany. Doubts about his leadership within the military and among civilians have been dispelled. Few realize how determined he is to take them into war. Still fewer would now support his overthrow. The conspirators will keep on trying, but they feel themselves very alone.
Their views were not changed, but their ability to resist was sapped to a large extent. They lost support in the establishment. People stopped backing the resistance. Some people were replaced, some people had other positions, and so on. So that, well, I think you could say they found themselves off balance and disorganized in 1938.
And the Prime Minister comes home, home to an empire filled with joy and relief, home to a welcome that he will never forget.
Neville Chamberlain is hailed as a hero when he returns from Munich.
This morning, I had another talk with the German Chancellor, Herr Hitler. And here is the paper which bears his name upon it as well as mine.
He is congratulated by the King and Queen at Buckingham Palace. Afterwards, he will boast at Downing Street that his agreement with Hitler will bring peace with honor and peace for our time. In Germany, conspirator Karl Goerdeler passes along a message to the British Foreign Office. Please do not take offense when I tell you the English are wrong in stating that the peace was saved at Munich. It was Hitler and his regime who were saved. As Goerdeler had predicted to the British, Hitler's appetite has only been whetted by gaining the Sudetenland. The following March, he breaks his solemn promise at Munich. His armies move into Prague, and the rest of Czechoslovakia falls under his control. On September 1st, Hitler invades Poland, and a still reluctant Neville Chamberlain is finally forced to declare war. What the conspirators had tried so hard to prevent has happened. Europe is at war. Now it's almost impossible to remove Hitler. It will take 5 years and millions of lost lives before they get another chance.